Yes, thank you very much, everyone, for joining today's webinar of the Financial Services Tax Conference 2022. This conference has taken place in London since 2019. Due to Corona, we had to do a bit of webinar, but on this Friday, we will also meet in London personally. Today's topic here for 1 hour is the digitizing of the withholding tax relief and reclaim process. And please allow me to introduce our panelists. From Finland, we have Ms. Katja Pussila from the Finnish Tax Authority. She will also introduce herself a bit later on. From Austria, we have Ms. Susanne Rauscher of the firm SDS. And from London, we have Rebecca Willmott from JP Morgan. So we are very happy that these three team members are participating and contributing to our seminar. And we will get the tax authority perspective from Finland. We will get the technology perspective from Austria. And we will get the industry perspective, asset servicing, custodian perspective from London. That is Europe, huh? And myself, I'm Steffen Gnutzmann from WTS in Germany. So we have, in the context of withholding tax reclaim, a past or a present with a number of pain points. There is a lack of harmonization of national tax law requirements, and double tax treaty refunds are also not fully harmonized. We have operational complexity of the process with examples like hard copy documents required or specific holding periods being introduced. We have a liability of the person who files the reclaim. Maybe it's the custodian. Maybe it's the person himself, the investor who has received the dividends. And especially from the industry perspective, there's a significant tax risk that some things can go wrong. And of course, as we are here in London, there are also fiduciary obligations of an asset manager towards his funds or the funds and the investors of the funds. And last but not least, due to certain, let's say, spiels that were seen in the market, I'll drop the word cum-ex. We probably have, and in some cases justifiably, a lack of trust in data with the tax authorities. Do I know everything that I should know before I pay out the money? However, we are not here to complain about the past. We would like to look into the future. And so for these 60 minutes, let us focus on the future. We will use the example of Trace and as implemented in Finland, the trailblazer, the front runner in this world, to look at what is happening currently, and not with many countries yet, but it is happening, and maybe look into the further future, what is up and ahead in the future. So maybe we will come to the conclusion that the future is bright and promising because of digitization. With that, and of course, we will also speak about the distributed ledger technology, blockchain as a tool in this context. With that introduction from myself, I would like to hand over first to Ms. Pussila, then to Ms. Rauscher, and then to Ms. Willmott, for you to introduce yourselves. Who are you, and what is your institutions, your personal involvement in the withholding tax relief and the digitization of this process? Maybe you could start, Ms. Pussila, please.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Katja Pussila. I'm a risk manager here at the Finnish Tax Administration. I've been involved with Finland's TRACE implementation from the very beginning, and even before that, I have a broad background with withholding tax issues, all the way from our previous relief at source system to the reclaim procedures. And I guess my stake here is to share our experiences regarding implementing not only TRACE, but also digitizing our refund procedures and introducing the completely electronic investor self-declaration procedure as a part of TRACE regime. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Susanne.
Hi. Thanks, Katja. Hi, everyone. My name is Susanne Rauscher-Nwokedi. I'm a senior business analyst here in SDS Vienna. We have implemented a reporting engine, a regulatory reporting engine, starting with QI reporting regime. After we added FATCA and CRS, and last year we also implemented TRACE Finland in close cooperation with the Finnish tax authorities and also our customers. So I go to more details later. So next to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Susanne. Rebecca Willmott from JP Morgan. I'm responsible at the bank for our core custody tax product offering. So within that, we are responsible for defining and delivering our tax service to clients, in addition to creating and maintaining our wider tax strategy. Of key importance in that context is the provision and maintenance of an optimal withholding tax service offering across multiple jurisdictions to our clients in relation to their global investments. And in addition to withholding taxes, we also provide services across the transaction tax space as well. So really that goes in hand with ensuring that we are able to collate, capture and process all relevant tax market change in order to either amend our existing tax service offering or derive new flavours of tax services. Part of our tax strategy includes, and this is relevant to the discussion today, consideration of our tax data strategy and our tax technology strategy. So hopefully I will be sharing through this discussion some elements of that. Thank you, Steffen.
Thank you to all of you. If we come to our third topic on the agenda, let me briefly introduce the concept of the treaty relief and compliance and enhancement as proposed by the OECD. What is this and who is doing it? As the pioneer among the OECD countries, Finland officially introduced the TRACE procedure as of 1 January 2021. And if I am not mistaken, 80 or so institutions have registered with the Finnish Tax Authority as authorized intermediaries. They are the spider in the web. They are the important institution in this procedure. And what is TRACE? And I think, Ms. Pussila, Finland is the only country so far. There are others, Sweden, I think, are thinking about it, but you're the only one who has it up and running. TRACE is, as I said, an implementation package produced by the OECD already in 2013. It was created to make financial transactions more transparent and to standardize the withholding tax process among member states. The new thing about TRACE is the role of an authorized intermediary, an AI, an organization that acts as the intermediary to reclaim withholding tax on portfolio investments. It is modeled along the qualified intermediary procedure of the US. Both the custodians and the depository banks can act as an authorized intermediary. If these service providers wish to apply relief at source, which is undoubtedly economically the best relief system via trace, then they must register as authorized intermediaries themselves or appoint an external AI. So, Ms. Pussila, if we go to item number 4 of our agenda, lessons learned from the implementation in Finland with regard to digitizing the withholding tax relief process. From the tax authority perspective, could you give us a bit of insight? What are lessons learned? You have probably been working quite a while on this. Finland is the pathfinder here. Please update us.
Thank you. I'll gladly do that. Well, first of all, I would say that the work is still in progress. There's still a lot of things to do. But I would say that based on our experiences from the first year, I would say that we definitely have a proof of concept that it does work. What amazed us actually was the scope of the system already the year 1, because regarding all the dividends that were paid that were eligible to be processed through trace system, over 90% of those dividends were paid to authorized intermediaries and were reported by authorized intermediaries, and lower rates were applied to roughly half of the dividends. And I think that's a reasonably good result given the magnitude of the change. It's a huge change to our system, and we were able to get treaty relief to half of the dividends. I think that's a reasonably good result for first year. And what also surprised us, to be honest, is that there were actually a lot of retail investors that were able to get treaty relief already year 1, because that's the thing that I think many tax administrations are very interested in, is to getting rid of the kind of like low risk and small reclaims that usually take up a lot of resources from the tax administrations and to be frank, don't usually contain that much risk. And I think what we can now say with confidence is that trace can actually resolve that issue, that even small retail investors from all over the world were able to get treaty relief already year 1. Of course, this doesn't mean that everybody got the treaty relief. Of course, there's still a lot of investors that don't have access to the system. We can also say that there were AIs with different kind of strategies. There were few, or actually many AIs that kind of like chose a test group of clients for the first year. They wanted to see whether it works, and then they are gonna expand the system year after year. So I think it's fair to say that it's gonna take a few more years before we can truly evaluate whether it works or not. But I would say that at least we have a proof of concept. And I would say that the process for payments with 15% tax rate, it seems to be working quite effortlessly. I think there's still work to be done regarding the enhanced due diligence regarding 0% payments. That's some kind of like additional risk feature that we added. I think that's gonna require some more work, but in general, I would say that we have a proof of concept, and we are very happy with the system. And we are looking forward to continuing to work with the industry to find kind of like what more can be done, basically. So where we are now is that we are actually in a process of giving feedback to the authorized intermediaries. We are having discussions with them. We are trying to hear what can be done. Is there any unclear issues? Is there anything that we could further clarify from the guidance? But I would also say that in terms of what works is that we actually introduced fully electronical digital investor self-declaration procedure. It doesn't mean that all the ISDs are electronical, because what we can see is that it also varies between industry operators, whether they are able to have an fully digital ISD. But that is one of the aspects that we get a lot of good feedback from the industry, that you are able to fully go digital with the Finnish trace, and we are very proud of it.
May I ask a few questions, Ms. Pussila?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you see interest from other tax authorities that would like to make use of your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think now that we've been able to publish statistics, that now that we are in a phase that we can say that it actually works in practice, I think that has increased a lot of interest amongst other tax administrations. However, I would say that now that there is this Commission initiative within the EU, that I think that means that many member states are kind of like waiting for what Commission will propose, and I'm not expecting to see any new movements before we get more feedback from the Commission what the EU proposal is going to look like. But yeah, I would say that our statistics, our practical experience has really attract more attention to the topic. And we are, of course, more than willing to help any other tax administration with the implementation. We honestly do believe that trace is a really good compromise between all the needs of different stakeholders. And I would also like to point out that we did modernize the original trace implementation package a bit, because it was already drafted quite some while ago. And we actually did introduce the due diligence process from CRS and DAC2, because I think that's the part that wasn't that clear in the trace implementation package. And I think that's also one of the benefits of the system, that the authorized intermediaries can actually utilize the same functions that they already utilized for CRS, FATCA and DAC2 purposes. And it actually same is true for tax administrations as well. It's a very good system for administrations as well, because now we get all the information from all over the world in a standardized digital format, which allows us to do very effective data analysis. We can actually get quite good analysis from the system with not that much manual labor. So I think that's one of the benefits of the system as well, that it can be implemented effectively for both the tax administration and the industry operators.
Okay, maybe it's interesting, and I don't know whether you can answer, you can please say no if it's not possible, but could you give us an idea how much time, how much manpower was required on the side of the Finnish Tax Authority to set up what is now successfully running?
Of course, when you are setting up a new system, it takes manpower. It's an IT project first and foremost, I would say. Yeah, I cannot tell you any specifics. But I would say that it was, I think you can compare it to building up CRS and DAC2 functions, basically. But now we were able to do it with less, because we already had the capability of utilize XMLs, for example, at place. So I would say that it was fairly reasonable for an IT project in terms of implementation cost. I can see that there's a question about what has gone wrong in implementing trace. Well, I would say that nothing has gone completely wrong. I think there's still areas that need further attention. We still need to continue working towards more and more investors getting treaty relief. We can see that there's a big difference between different AIs. Some AIs grant treaty relief widely to many clients, and then there are AIs that don't want to take that liability. So I would say that it's basically too early to say. I think we need some more time. I think it's unrealistic to think that such a big change would just simply go through within 1 year. I think it's a step-by-step process, and we need to keep working on with the aspects that don't work fully yet. But I would say that in general, we have a proof of concept and it's up and running. And I think that's a good result, given that it's only been 1 year of operating the system.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pussila. I think we will switch to Ms. Rauscher because, of course, we will also come back to you with our item 5. Ms. Rauscher, your firm has helped clients with implementing on their level the technology of what trace means with the Finnish, in the Finnish scenario. What are the lessons learned from this, from the technology perspective, please?
Our reporting tool was already in place for QI, so which is similar to trace in regarding in what to report, like dividend payments and so on. And it was similar as also to CRS as in terms of how to report as an XML. So what we tried with our solution is to make it as flexible as possible. So in our solution, we have a so-called decision engine in place for every reporting regime. So you can identify, once you have imported all the data, like master data and transactions into the system, this decision engine will be evaluating your transactions in which transactions are reporting relevant, and this is for every reporting regime we have a different decision engine, of course, and then it will come up with an XML. As in the first step, it will be the in case of Finland trace, it will be the OECD XML, and then we translate this XML into a country-specific XML, so into the Finnish trace XML, as we did for CRS, for example, for more than 80 countries. So the technology was quite similar to the already existing reporting regimes, which was, of course, easier to implement then.
Mm. And from your technology side, could you give us an idea, of course, only roughly, how long does it take to implement? How long does it take to build such technology? I understand on the back of your QI experience, but just to give us a feeling for such project.
We could say that we took last year to implement or to integrate Trace Finland into our system. So then we had our customer were reporting Trace Finland 2022 in ending of January for the first time, and they were very happy with the solution. So as far as I know, they are in reclaim process at the moment, but they haven't uploaded the new file yet, as I know.
So it took about a year with design and then programming for getting the existing system to do what Finland wanted. Mm-hmm. And
also we tried to have a solution that is very flexible. So in case, so we hoped since the EU initiative was suggesting a standardized system, we were hoping that other countries would follow the example of Finland. And we are in discussion with Sweden at the moment. They are still working on their regulations. Yeah, we are up for a meeting in the next month or so. We haven't fixed the date yet. Mm-hmm. So we tried, of course, to keep our solution as flexible and customizable as possible. So if countries with similar reporting regimes or reporting requirements will follow, we can implement it more easily afterwards.
And do you have an overview of the market? Are there competitors of yours, or are there many proprietary systems that big asset services are building? Do you know what is the choice in the market for customers?
This is a tough question. I heard that there are competitors, of course, you know, they're not all of the 80 AIs are reporting with our tool, so there must be another solution as well. So, but I'm not in contact or aware of any of these competitors, so I cannot say anything about that.
Okay. Okay, then let's switch to our asset servicer, the industry perspective. Ms. Willmott, lessons learned from Trace. I think JP Morgan is an authorized intermediary. What is your take on this topic?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that we, JP Morgan, and I'm sure our industry at large, commend the Finnish tax authorities for being the pioneers in implementing the OECD Trace model, for being the first. That was no mean feat. And I think it should also be said that JP Morgan, and this has been the case through a number of industry working groups as well, have found all the representatives from the Finnish tax authorities at all times through the last 2 years, when there has been a need for discussion and interaction, to be incredibly open, transparent, and willing to listen. And there's no doubt that has absolutely positively helped everybody in wrapping their arms around this new process for the first time. Clearly, and I look at this through the product lens, from a servicing perspective, one of the key appeals always, and as you mentioned, Katja, this goes back years, so we're now living it for the first time, one of the key benefits was being able to move to a relief at source mode of relief. And that's a benefit to the asset servicing community because it moves us away from more burdensome and administrative reclaim processes. It's of benefit to our clients because clearly they're getting tax due to them in a far more timely manner. And it's a benefit to the Finnish tax authorities for many reasons, not least one assumes to continue to attract foreign investment. So there was absolute, in terms of business cases, a strength to be gained from that. Many custodians, as we've talked about, including JP Morgan, therefore initiated large programs of work to duly implement. That included registering as an AI, installing new annual reporting mechanisms, whether a decision was made to build or buy, to Susanne's point, and implementing the new collation of the electronic ISD. So all of that was new and, as you would expect, required a program of effort and work. And I think that's been successful. I think Katja's summary absolutely resonated with myself and JP Morgan in that everything Finland set out to achieve thus far has been successful. I also echo that there are areas that are still being worked on, which is completely understandable with us. So where, for example, there is a need to, particularly in affecting withholding tax rate outcomes below that 15% threshold, as you mentioned, Katja, there are areas that are still being looked at. And that isn't absolutely necessarily the fault of the Finnish tax authorities. There are many jurisdictions introducing, in the spirit of, anti-abuse tools, should we call it, new rules around things like holding periods. And they're challenging tools to put into play, particularly for large custodial houses with significant and substantial technology stacks is not an easy thing to do. And it's just a path we are all on, and we will get there. There are some residual liability points. And I know, Katja, the tax authorities issued, I think it was updated guidance a couple of weeks ago, which we're looking at. So the point really is that whilst there are certain aspects still being worked through, it's incredibly helpful and efficient that the industry feels there's an ability to talk to the Finnish tax authorities openly, and the Finnish tax authorities have duly responded and wants it to work. I think it should also be said that all of the good work that's been done over the last 2 years in this specific context will and should absolutely benefit other jurisdictions and other fiscal authorities who subsequently do decide to move forward and adopt trace as well. Although, to be expected, there will be differences in how each jurisdiction enshrines those rules into their own domestic legislation to a greater or lesser extent. Still, there have been a number of technical considerations that have had to be worked through the Finnish experience, which should be of benefit to everyone. So hopefully that's a good news story for everyone. But overall, I think it's been incredibly positive. And as Katja says, we continue to work on the path to enable us all in the end to have full usage of our AI status. And that's certainly the desire. While we are where we are at the moment, there is a need still to file, and this is coming on to the broader topic of the discussion, Steffen, there is a need still to file tax reclaims as an asset servicer, not just in Finland, in many other markets. And I think, as always, the challenge for us is that differing source jurisdictions have differing filing processes. So part of the issue is ensuring that we adhere to the referable standards and also maintain the change therein that may occur. So despite this drive to relief at source, global drive to relief at source, which there is a huge momentum behind, of which trace is one example, there are many others, the CMU action plan, even the withhold tax code of conduct, this has been a long path we're on, but yet progress is being made. We are still having to live to a degree with the activity around tax reclaims. And so I think for us, it comes down to looking at digitisation from two key aspects. One is very much from an internal perspective, in terms of what can we do within our own house, versus the external perspective, the market side. And I know we're going to touch on that later, Steffen, which would include considerations such as the deployment of DLT and blockchain technology in the tax space. But certainly from an internal perspective, huge strides have been made in that regard. And there is really a need to look quite forensically at the end-to-end tax reclaim life cycle to then make a strategic determination as to where certain types of technology can best be used. And really the purpose is at all times to bring a few things. It's to absolutely enable tax risk reduction, and it's to increase STP, to enhance operational productivity, and to ultimately improve our tax servicing to clients. So, to that end, I might share some examples. Utopia, as a custodian, is to be able to press a button and that will automatically generate your reclaim compilation. All the information, all the bits of paper, all the forms, everything come together to the extent that they're held in-house. And certainly, technology efforts are being made to that end. Of course, there are some jurisdictions that are more complex than others. And so the question is whether one could ever get to full automation, but still it's important that progress is made. I think one reclaim I saw a few months ago was comprised of circa 500 pieces of paper. And whilst that's an extreme example, it illustrates the point and the need to try and improve efficiencies. Also, and this applies to both relief at source as well as tax reclaim, in the tax documentation consumption space, it's incredibly critical whether we are receiving tax documents from clients or from tax authorities to be able to, as much as possible, systemically capture and consume those documents into your tax technology stack. There's also an ability to use OCR, AI type technologies to machine read documents to a certain degree. My personal view is, and I may be outdated, that depending on the document type, there is still also a need for human reasonableness checks, as well as those supported by technology, but it still makes a huge difference in terms of the ability to process more quickly and efficiently and more securely. We're also seeing a large uptick, perhaps unsurprisingly, in clients' desires for help in the pre-population of tax documentation. And that's completely understandable. Clients are faced with huge amounts of tax documents that they have to complete, and it's overwhelming. And so as a service provider, we need to try and work out how we can increasingly help in that space. I think there is always a need to define the policy first. And what I mean by that in the context of pre-population is there are rules and there's a need for a technical analysis on a per market basis as to where it is and isn't allowable to pre-populate in certain contexts. Once your policy is defined, then you can more seamlessly look at the appropriate technology design and solution in how you transfer and load the various data attributes in question for whatever tax document it is. But key whenever custodians are considering this type of service, absolutely critical, is being able to stand behind the robustness of your client's tax reference data. I've said this before and I'll keep saying it. Good tax data is the beating heart of good tax compliance, and without it, there's not much point in spending large amounts of money and effort deploying new technology. So that sort of comes to the bear, I think, whenever you're talking about tax, but also particularly in the form filling space. And then lastly, as we continue to look at where we can bring efficiencies with digitisation in the tax reclaim lifecycle, it's probably worth mentioning inquiry letters. Not a favourite of custodians, but a necessity none the least. And obviously, again, this is understandably on the part of the global fiscal authorities, to your point at the beginning, Steffen, around trust and the rebuilding of trust. There is a desire to scrutinise, in certain instances, beneficial ownership, factual information, all sitting behind withholding tax entitlement. And one of the ways that's manifested starkly over the last 2 years, to us anyway, is through the issuance of inquiry letters. And the inquiry letters can be wide and varied in terms of the nature of the information they're asking. So again, another example of where we've seen digitisation in this context is the building of APIs across the various tax modules, so is that there is an ability to, in a timely fashion and seamlessly, consume beyond your tax technology stack, because often, as I say, the information is not just client tax reference data. From anywhere you are holding the requested information within your custody book of record, use those APIs to quickly and efficiently bring in the data components being requested in order to then provide a response, or information to the client to provide a response. And often the turnaround times are challenging and tight in those requests. You may have only 30 days. So the old way of doing it, which was partially reliant on the postal system, couriers, you would lose days out of those 30 days doing that. And so again, it's another example of where we have found introducing new technology processes and digitisation processes to bring efficiencies to that type of area has been absolutely critical, not just in ensuring we're able to support our clients in their tax compliance duties, but being able to ensure that we are continuing to move at the same pace as the tax authorities in delivering our tax service.
Thank you very much.
If you don't mind, Steffen, I would actually like to echo a bit what Rebecca has said, because because I actually, in terms of queries and free format attachment of reclaims, that is actually an issue for tax administrations as well. And actually, one of the side effects of Trace that we actually did not that actively expect was that it actually helped and helps reclaim procedure as well by enhancing transparency to the nominee registered holding chains within the financial industry. Because nowadays, majority of resources of tax administrations are actually used to detect money flows, and that is just a kind of like the end result of the COMEX fraud, to be frank. Because everybody knows there's been a huge issue of tax administrations refunding money that was never paid to government in the first place. And now I think people are asking that, how can that happen? Well, but if you think about it from the tax administration's perspective, many tax administrations need to solely rely on the information that the investor provides. They don't have any reference data that tax administrations can use to kind of like match the reclaim that is made towards some other reporting solution. But now on the trace regime, we are actually able, even if we don't have the beneficiary information, we have more visibility to the payment chains. We can kind of like go back to the trace reports and see whether the reclaim is feasible or not. And we actually have worked together with many AIs in terms of clients that the AI wasn't completely comfortable of granting treaty relief for some reason. For example, that there is some issue of treaty entitlement. They were unsure. But we then decided that we will allow you to report the information of your client. And that has actually helped us significantly, that some AIs, even if they withhold the maximum rate, they reported the information of their client. And now within the refund procedure, we can already see that, okay, this investor is a client of this AI, and this amount of money was paid to this legal owner of the shares, and we can actually focus on the legal issue of treaty entitlement instead of using a lot of resources on tracking money flows. And I think that's the way to go in the future, is to enhancing transparency, which will, in the end of the day, build that trust back that was lost due to the COMEX frauds, basically.
Yes, a very interesting remark. Also on the additional insights from the transparency that you have now as the tax authority. I didn't know that. Thank you very much.
And Steffen, could I just add a quick comment on the back of Katja's, adding to what Katja was saying? I promise it'll be quick. You know, it's not in dispute, and this goes beyond Finland, Katja, but it's not in dispute, I don't think, that the tax authorities have also been undergoing huge technology transformation change in certain markets. And that makes sense. You know, the tax process is going paperless. And I think banishing paper naturally means, whether it's through trace or some other mode, that the tax authorities are able to take in information in formats that can be more easily absorbed into databases, which in turn makes it easier for the authorities to review and analyze, as you said, that information. And I think, interestingly, I guess from a more philosophical perspective, as the tax authorities continue to adopt new tools and technologies in this way, the old world of tax planning and compliance is sort of gone, and actually governments alongside ourselves hopefully are at the forefront of this tax technology transformation. So it's not just about, I think, you know, the point is, if we as an asset servicer are not at a minimum keeping up in tandem with that tax technology change, and actually ideally outstripping it, it will clearly be disadvantageous to all. And I think the only other thing I'd add is, you know, as the tax authorities are able to more easily and readily review the information at hand as it relates to tax benefits, the connectivity with the purpose of AEOI, the automatic exchange of information concept, comes to the fore as well. Because not only are the tax authorities able to obtain more data and more information, there's then a natural sharing of that with each other. So actually, the trust should automatically, over time, be baked in as a result, that the information is coming from all sides and it's available and it's more easily consumable. So I think the AEOI concept is relevant in that context as well.
Yes, thank you very much for those remarks. trust is the oil of a society and of processes between individuals and institutions, and if that's not there, it's not good. Ms. Pussila was also, I heard, if I understood you correctly, I think you said you rather recognize over deduction by the authorized intermediaries than you would see, of course, just 1 year experience, but you do not see under deduction of withholding tax or over reclaim. You rather see an under the amounts that you see relieved at source are maybe even too low right now. Is that right? Well, is my understanding correct?
Yeah, I think you understood correctly. I cannot say that there isn't any issues of under withholding. Of course, those can exist, and we are going through those as we speak. But I would say that in general, the authorized intermediaries have taken their responsibilities very seriously. And in our system, the authorized intermediary is also liable for under withholding if it was due to its negligence. So it's not a strict liability as such, but they need to follow the due diligence procedure. And if they do not, they can be held liable if there is an under withholding. And I think that has led to a very good dialogue with the industry. And I think the authorized intermediaries take their responsibilities seriously. They raise new issues, and they are kind of like trying to find the balance between tax risk and offering relief at source. And that is actually one of the reasons that I believe that we are going to see a wider more widely applied treaty relief in Finland, because now that we are having this dialogue, we are doing this. We are going through our guidance, we are giving more guidance and having discussions with the authorized intermediaries. Also, the authorized intermediaries will feel more comfortable of granting treaty relief, because what we are trying to kind of like the main goal of the system is to offer legal certainty for the industry as well, so that they will have clear rules on what they need to do, what is the due diligence procedure, and to us, as in the exchange, we will get really good quality data, good information. So we are really trying to achieve a system that would benefit everybody. We will keep doing tax control. We will make sure that authorized intermediaries do follow the due diligence procedure, but at the same time, we are trying to build a system where there are clear rules and authorized intermediaries can rely on that if they follow the procedure, they won't be held liable if the investor, for example, comes up with a plan that the authorized intermediary isn't aware of at all, for example, because that does happen as well. So it's not like authorized intermediaries can be held liable for everything that the investor might do. So I think that's also needs to be said out loud.
Thank you. We are approaching our last 10 minutes, just as a quick remark here. So if we look into the future, we will only be able to hit a few highlights probably from each of your perspective. Ms. Willmott already said quality of data. I call it GIGO. If garbage goes in, then garbage goes out. Ms. Pussila already said that there are other countries knocking on the door. What is your experience, Finland? So where does the future bring us here? Where does it take us? And if we talk about scandals like cum-ex, let me quickly phrase this this problem. In the end, without going into the detail, basically trades in securities were faked, right? Somebody claimed he had borrowed or maybe lent out, and it didn't really happen. Suddenly we had 3 times the same share in reflected, at least in tax authority documentation. If distributed ledger technology, blockchain, were employed for such a, in this context, we would need more data. We would not just need the gross amount of the dividend paid on the 3rd of May 2022 to person A in Ireland, but we would need transaction data. Who sold 100 of Microsoft mutual stock to whom at what point in time? In the future, do you see a room for such technology being employed, or is it maybe even detrimental to the position of the authorized intermediaries? They are the generators of trust right now. If that were outsourced to an IT system like blockchain, would that not maybe harm the position of the authorized intermediary? Or right now, the trace system in Finland even enforces this position. So it's not my show here. Maybe Ms. Pussila, would you like to start if we keep the same order? First the tax authority, then the technology, then the fund industry?
Yeah, I think sometimes when we talk about blockchain, it's kind of like gets this into this position that it would magically solve all the issues. I don't think that's the case. It's a one technical solution, and there are others that could as easily work. However, I do think that it's one of those technological solutions that could help the system, could enhance the trust, one could say, enhance the compliance level. However, I'm a bit skeptical whether that would work. If it is a separate system where the information is put in from a separate trade settlement system. So I think in order it to work and in order to maintain its integrity, that would require that the blockchain-based system would automatically interact with the trade settlement system. And I think that's a requirement that it's going to take quite a long time before that would be the case, I would say. I don't know, but that's kind of like what I would suspect, because if it's a separate system, even if it's a blockchain-based, but there is a risk of wrongdoing if it's a separate system where somebody inputs the information in. So that's I would require. So I don't think it's like a magical thing that would resolve everything, but I do think it's an interesting technology, and I've seen case studies of it that it seems that it could be utilized for this purpose. But at least based on my own experiences, that would require that it would have some kind of API interface or some other solution that would interact automatically with different systems. And I think the trade settlement system is the key with this respect.
I can maybe add from a German perspective that in Germany, since I think at least for a year, or maybe it was this summer, I forgot, electronic fund units are allowed to be issued. So you can digitalize fund units on a blockchain, for example. But German equity securities, so common stock, are not allowed to be digitalized yet. So we see here, I think what you just referred to, there is a risk that the legislator, at least in Germany, seems to see. So if we had all data of trading Volkswagen stock on the blockchain, it would, and we had a link to the trace system, it would probably be very helpful, but at least in Germany right now, it's not even allowed. Ms. Rauscher or Ms. Willmott, what will the future bring here?
So
Willmott,
we,
sorry. Yeah.
So. Okay, so we are currently working on a solution for the tax law change in Germany. So for to keep like a hand on the disposal for 45 days after the dividend payment. So this is what we are currently working on. So we are not working on a blockchain solution, I have to admit. So we are using different technologies for the moment.
Ms. Willmott?
Yeah, and I think from our perspective as a custodian, and I talked about this at the beginning in terms of the effort done market side, in delivering our services to clients, we have a large network as well across many, many jurisdictions. So the idea of being able to create a tax ecosystem on which all tax information and documentation is able to flow in a safe, recorded fashion from the relevant parties with the appropriate permissions is very appealing. But at the same time, I absolutely agree with Katja. It's easy to get swept away in the hype. I've absolutely seen certain proof of concepts work. I think the theory behind blockchain, that it does provide for a tamper-proof immutable record, absolutely marries beautifully with what the tax authorities are looking for in the context of international taxation. I don't think we're there yet, and I think one of the key ways from an industry perspective we will only be able to get there with blockchain is with the absolute formal buy-in from the tax authorities. But there are other, and this is very much in the fintech space, other fintechs who are working at the moment to look at ways in which they might be able to help parties in the chain, such as the custodian community, using other types of technologies to build the pipes between us and our network, for example, whether that's using sophisticated new workflow, case management technology, whatever it may be. We all want to move away from having to deal with any party in a jurisdiction through emails, spreadsheets, etc. It's just not optimal and fit for purpose today. So I think blockchain is one aspect. There are other areas in this newer world of technology that are being investigated and looked at from the asset servicing community.
Okay, time has flown by. We have 2 minutes left. Instead of, I wanted to ask you the question about the fairy queen who could fulfill your wishes. I don't think we will do this now. I would like to thank all three of you very much for your contribution and for taking out the time to share your thoughts and insights here on this topic. If I look at it, it is very fascinating what is happening. It's completely international. It's tax law and IT, a fascinating mixture, large volumes, intricate problems, intellectually challenging sometimes. And so thank you very much for your participation in our seminar here as panelists. Ms. Pussila from Finland, Ms. Rauscher from Austria, and Ms. Willmott from the UK. Thank you very much for joining to the audience. It was a pleasure to have you with us here today. And I think we can stop. And again, thank you very much to the three panelists for your participation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.